The Northwest Province today as part of a post-State of the Nation address presidential imbizo. We've seen several of those ministers being called upon by the President to the podium to respond to issues of crime and service delivery. Residents had a chance to raise their issues earlier. The President has been accompanied by the Northwest Premier, his ministers, MECs and mayors. Now, in May of 2018, the entire provincial government was placed under administration after major failures in financial administration and governance, and that was in terms of Section 100 of the Constitution. The President referring at the end there to Section 100 and just talking about their plans going forward. To discuss, we're now joined by political analyst from the University of the Northwest, Sethulego Matebesi. Mr. Matebesi, thank you for being with us. This was a very high-profile meeting with the President, and we saw multiple ministers there. Just tell us the significance of all of them being in one place, this presidential imbizo, and specifically in the Northwest Province.
Hi, good evening, Francis, and good evening to South Africans. I am actually from the University of the Free State, but nonetheless, I strongly believe that this is what we can talk about: a government that works, a government that engages with its people, a government that celebrates and puts people at the center. Because what we have seen in the past, we've often seen 3-4 months before any elections, that we've seen, almost like a mushrooming of community engagement. And yes, the government immediately after a high-level State of the Nation address engaging with the residents of one province, and that is Northwest. And we know Northwest historically has been a province that has been facing a lot of challenges in terms of administration, not only at provincial level, but also in various municipalities in that area.
All right. Give us just a bit of the history. One of the most troubled provinces in our land, essentially leading up to this assurance that they're trying to get somewhere and it won't be an administration forever.
Yeah, no, the problem with, and it's not only, relating to Northwest, it's a vicious recycling of leaders. And it seems as if, I wouldn't say whether it is the ANC or who is not getting it right, but we're still yearning. I strongly believe that the citizens of the Northwest is still yearning for a leader who will put the interest of the people in front. Because if you drive through Northwest, it's the same as Northwest and the Eastern Cape. If you look at the road infrastructure, it is unacceptable. The infrastructure at schools and all that, service delivery. There are communities that continuously battle to have access to clean water, drinking water, and yet the national government keeps on pumping on an annual basis money into these provinces. And that's where the problem is. And I think perhaps the President, once again, and those ministers were sending a strong message to say, we want to, at least get our hands dirty by directly intervening in some of the challenges that is facing this province.
Well, it's been over 2 years. So how effective has that intervention been? Because last year the DA was saying it wasn't working. The EFF was saying that nobody guilty of wrongs of the past had been brought to book. Has there been real traction, especially in light of what the ministers were saying today as well?
No, and that is a problem. You intervene, but sometimes the ones that are being sent to deal with the problem, they themselves are also conflicted. Remember, the whole issue here is also the elephant in the room, fighting for positions. And unfortunately, some of these administrators, instead of dealing with the fundamental administrative and financial problems, service delivery issues, they themselves fuel the division and within the provinces and even at municipal level. And that's why, as I've indicated, you find this vicious cycle of peddling new leaders, new administrators, while the issues on the ground are not being resolved or tackled.
There is fatigue, certainly, around South African problems, but the President has always highlighted this district development model, and this was sort of a launch for that in the Northwest as well. Speaking glowingly about it, and the idea is that instead of working in silos, you'll have different sectors, different parts of government from different levels, provincial, national, municipalities working together, maybe around pit toilets, the things that involved various departments. Are you excited about that? Do you believe this could be the game changer that the president has made it out to be?
No, well, we are never found wanting when it comes to devising new plans. We've been there. We had a district model, and I think the whole rationale behind the district municipal model is to support your local governance structures. But we had that. You had the provincial. Up until we master a basic issue, a basic matter that we need to address, and that is consequence management. You may have all these models. At the end of the day, it will be business as usual for people who are being appointed in positions who are not supposed to be appointed in the first place, and those who are supposed to be appointed just sitting around while the citizens are suffering. Yes, it's all well to come up with this plan. The government needs to come up with plans. But at the end of the day, my question is, why don't you go and just try and implement the basics? And the basics is, once you have appointed a chief financial officer, let that individual be held accountable. If money is not being spent appropriately, remove the head of a department that does not have oversight over the things that happen. These are the things that need to happen. We can't continuously reinvent the wheel with all these glorious public relations exercise, new inventions and all that. And I say this with the utmost respect, but we had a district model in the past and it did not work.
Yeah, and one of the issues that was meant to be addressed by the administration of this province was the lack of qualified people in key positions, like you talk about the financial people in provinces or municipalities. So no real tangible evidence that has been changed. Professor, if not everything is solved today, my final question to you is, was this a good thing? We don't often see the president taking questions directly from journalists, never mind members of the public, and really going and focusing on residents. Is this good for our democracy? I guess people want to be heard at the very least.
Well, I just read before our interview there, and I also saw some snippets of interruptions at the venue. And that is indicative that people do not often see the president. And I mean, well, I think most of us will be naive to expect the president to be everywhere. This, for me, is a good start. They need to continuously engage, even if it's not the president. But at least our government, our local governance structures need to continuously engage with the people. And that's why people become disruptive, because I think for them also it was a huge surprise to see this happening in the Northwest. Because as I've indicated, you often see these things happening just before conferences, a national or local government when it's election campaigns. And at the end of the day, I think it will send a good message to people that we do have a responsive government. But for me, it will just remain at that level, a very rhetoric. And it's only up until we try to master the basics. And it can't take us 6 months. It can't take us 3 months. The government has the experience to deal with these issues. And it is basic issues, but unfortunately, there is absolutely no political will to deal with this monster of crime, corruption, and complete incompetence at certain levels in terms of governance.
All right, so believing it was a lot of talk today, we'll follow up, but not looking towards much action there. Professor Sethulego Matebesi from the University of the Free State. My apologies that we didn't get that right in the beginning.